Country Director, Frederick Newman Foundation, Freedom, and of course Charlie. Nice to see you again, the first Secretary of the Australian Embassy. And also, nice to meet you, friends. Professor Fabio, Director of the University of Salento. Please, thank you for inviting me to ask me to give a keynote speech. And today I will try to. The screen says so. Okay. I'm going to talk on strategic alliances, regional integration, and ASEAN, and implication for East Asia and ASEAN. Let me start a little bit on the history of the trade and how East Asia was growing. And the history was a little bit earlier part of thinking about how integration is going to take place. And the integration, the way we thought about integration in East Asia, how to bring all the different bilateral, multilateral affairs together. And the two dimensions that came out of this in the 1980s and 1990s, right after Asian financial crisis, is CPTPP and ASEAN. And fairly we knew at that point in time that these strategic alliances and multipolar system is one equilibrium that is likely to take place. And we initiated the CPTPP, driven by US and the P4 countries. And Singapore was one of the P4 countries to engage China from a strategic point of view on a rule-based trading area. That's the whole idea of CPTPP. And CPTPP, or TPP then, was actually to align and manage technology, trade, and the political economy of trade from a rule-based trading area. So unfortunately, TPP becomes CPTPP, and we lose the chance to actually engage China from a rule-based trading area on various dimensions of trade itself and globalization. And because we lose that chance, we end up with a second equilibrium called strategic alliances. And that's how we are now. And fairly, in line with CPTPP, we also initiated RCEP. And RCEP is the regional integration of bringing China into a more rule-based trading area. It's not a China-driven multilateral agreement. It is ASEAN-driven multilateral agreement. And ASEAN is the one who drives it through ASEAN Secretariat and ASEAN Summit in East ASEAN Summit and through ASEAN +1. So we go through that dimension. So we must keep this in mind as we start talking about the world's largest global trading area, trading bloc, or a rule-based trading area called ASEAN, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. CPTPP, TPP becomes CPTPP, and US already decided not to join TPP or any multilateral agreement. So fairly, we are now ending up the second balance of trading in a global globalization, global trading area, and that is the strategic alliances. So strategic alliances are multipolar systems. That means once we talk about strategic dimension, it will allow fragmentation of policy, fragmentation of politics, and fragmentation of trade and globalization. So fairly, if I'm going to predict how we're going to be, we will be in a multipolar system. From US, one multipolar, and then the other Europe, and another by European, by East Asia, ASEAN, and the next one is Africa. Africa will form a multipolar system because Africa also has African continental freedom agreement, the largest area that is going to come together. So fairly, we're going to see multipolar system. The strategic alliances, whether it's going to embed itself into this into multipolar global trading areas, is something we can discuss later in the question and answer. So let me put up the background for today's discussion. At least I can set up where we are. And I've already given you the history. The reason why I'm quite aware of the history is under P4, Singapore, I was representing Singapore in P4, together with my trade colleagues to drive the P4 initiative. And then in APAC, I remember in 2018 or so, we initiated the first integration of TPP, and then allowed other countries to come in. So fairly we are quite aware that this strategic alliance will hit us, but not in this intensity. The intensity is because of the multi-dimensional shocks that are appearing in our system. So in the economic system now, we are experiencing more economic shocks, not back-to-back shocks. Back-to-back shock means we have the Asian financial crisis, then we have 2011, and then the bubble burst, and then we have the global financial crisis. Each crisis, we deal with that in a different way. But now we have multi-dimensional shocks that are occurring at the same point in time. With the Russia-Ukraine war, the US-China trade war, which we expected to happen, and then with the COVID-19 pandemic, and then with now the current Middle East shock. So these shocks are persisting and deepening and widening the issues that we are dealing with. So strategic alliances is going to embed in this cumulative shocks. That has a lot of implication for us in terms of how we're going to do trade. Because as I already mentioned, CPTPP might have given us, or TPP might have given us the best solution to have global trade, global integration, and to manage global integration and global trade and globalization from a rule-based trading world. Because fairly, later I'm going to show you the data, that globalization or snowballization already started occurring after the global financial crisis. So how to manage this, TPP was very important, and US was very important for us. So it was not engaging China that was becoming more important for us. Now in East Asia, how to engage US is becoming more difficult for us. It's not engaging China, because from East Asia perspective, fairly we have China in ASEAN, the rule-based trading area. And China is very much into the global dimension of driving this, because the fundamentals that are required for this globalization is already embedded in China itself. If you ask me for an evidence-based policy maker, and I'm also a trade advisor to Cambodia, so I advise them in integration and so on. So if you go to China, the lowest denominator in business, that means you go to a coffee shop, they will not accept money, they will only accept phone, cashless. That is the level of integration they have. So if I go to the US and I keep my phone, then it is not acceptable yet. Still currency. So again, you can see the transformation China has taken itself to embed itself in key fundamentals to actually drive globalization from a rule-based trading dimension. Whereas US, on the other hand, is not investing in the key fundamentals. That is creating them to move into a more political economy and the strategic alliances. So again, how this is going to happen is going to be very interesting, but the key part of this strategic alliance is the embedment into the accumulation of shocks. Russia, Ukraine war, the Middle East war. The strategic alliance will embed itself into that dimension and create multiple systems. Whereas a rule-based trading area, like an RCEP, or multilateral agreements like RCEP, embed itself in globalization and into the GVC and the rule-based trading activity driven by businesses, multinationals. That is the difference that you're going to see as we move forward. So how we're going to align ourselves is going to be interesting to see. And how East Asia and ASEAN is going to align itself is interesting to see. The last count I had from Vietnam, you have 16 FTAs. Fairly 16 FTAs. And Vietnam is one country that already have bilateral with the European Union. ASEAN is still struggling with the European Union FTA. So fairly a rule-based trading dimension that we created is creating a lot of growth and the resilience that we have in the economy. So the counterfactual is, if you don't have these FTAs, your resilience will be low because market access, you have integration. And I was flying in from Singapore. The discussion was, this is the tech companies discussing behind me. They were asking, should they go to India to do the information technology, all this decoding and coding, or they should come to Vietnam. The SME was saying, don't go to India, go to Vietnam. Quality is much more higher. It is because of rule-based training dimension that we created. So strengthening these rule-based training areas become very, very fundamental as multiple shocks occur. And the strategic alliance is expected to become stronger and stronger because of these multiple shocks. So, from a US perspective, having these multiple shocks is an advantage to them. From East Asia, from ASEAN perspective, having these multiple shocks and resolving these fast enough, so move into a rule-based trading area becomes very fundamental for us. So we have to manage these two dimensions. Because without these two dimensions, East Asia, ASEAN, and Vietnam will slow down significantly. And if you move too much into the strategic alliances, our GBC resilience will fall, become weaker. So I will discuss a little bit about that in terms of the export control, or the last bullet point is the Biden's introduction of the Chip and Science Act. And the European Union is also introducing similar, and the Inflation Act. It's all, it's going to be very moving to the third class. So currently we are the second class because US is not in the trading area. So imposing all these distortions in trade, we are moving to the third class. And the interesting part about subsidies is where you're going to throw the subsidies is important in the value chain. From China's perspective, they throw a lot of subsidies at the lower part of the value chain. Lower part of the value chain that created what you call state-owned enterprise and created multinational enterprises. A good example for Vietnam is the WinCorp. WinCorp has transformed itself to that stage, and that transformation, even in the literature, when we do the literature, is not possible without subsidies and some level of protection. From trade perspective. So we have adopted, East Asia has adopted these strategies, which is called the East ASEAN Miracle, because that is the first policy experiment which we ever did in a trade perspective, to show that we can converge and use rule-based trading area and converge very fast in the global trading area, faster than what developed countries have done. That's why it's called the East ASEAN Miracle. And that miracle was transformed by China and allowed them to converge and rebalance themselves from double-digit growth to single-digit growth. They keep fundamentals. And Vietnam is also doing the same transformation. So without a medium-sized enterprise, we cannot participate in trade and globalization. And that is very fundamental because the value chain requires up, backward and forward and to move into the higher value-added activities. So GVC is called Global Value-Added Activities. So the question we need to ask, as I mentioned, we're trying to engage US. What is the value added of the subsidies? What is the value added of the chip dimension in the value chain? What is the value added of the Inflation Act or whatever act they're putting in? It's distortionary. And from trade perspective, distortionary creates a lot of fragmentation. So as I mentioned, on top of this is the multiple shocks. And the multiple shocks will empower the US to actually create more strategic alliances, not the trade part, because that's a political economy. That's the reason why the Indo-Pacific dimension has the difficulty of pushing trade itself into one of its fields. Because that is not the purpose of Indo-Pacific, to engage China. But we miss the chance of engaging China in that activity itself. And as you can see, I was there in the ASEAN Cambodia Chairmanship. And before the US came, they already announced that strategic alliances is important and they will move away from trade-based discussion. And this is the trade representative. So I'm not going to go through the forecast. The only thing I want to highlight in terms of the forecast is the resilience of East Asia. The resilience of East Asia is given at the right. This is the most updated numbers. So fairly, the global economy, this is I think they included, IMF included the Middle East war. And fairly, you can see 2023, global economy will lose 0.5, and by 2024, the global economy will contract. 0.1% is quite a lot from global perspective. And advanced countries will still contract for the next 2 years. The only resilience you're going to see is from emerging countries. It's not because of statistical lines we have, it's because the rule-based trading area we have. And again, if you break this down, you can see, as I mentioned, emerging Asia, or East Asia, still manage to hold on higher growth, and fairly by 2024, still will have enough contraction, enough resilience with all this accumulation of shocks itself. The only other continent that has the resilience is Africa. So interestingly, the multipolar system is emerging, slowly emerging itself. And countries that are going to contract quite significantly are the advanced countries.